Hello, boys. This is White Pill Media, and welcome back to the Trough.
One little, two little, three little engines. Four little, five little, six little engines. Sorry, that one was a half-breed. Seven little, eight little, nine little engines. 10 little engine boys.
We have several titles to get through. We have 9 overall. I wanted to get it to 10. It ended up being 9. It's a pretty good variety. I'm recording this a little after midnight on Saturday, so I guess it's technically Sunday morning for me. I wasted several hours today playing like the least fun I've ever had playing a video game. Like legitimately, like actually angry and upset. There's definitely going to be a video on that in like 2 or 3 weeks, but holy shit, I got mad. I also got sunburned pretty bad today, so I'm not in a great mood, but we're going to go ahead with the Trough. We have a lot to cover, some titles that we're familiar with, and then some new authors, new faces, new book. And before we get in, as per tradition on the Trough, I've tried a little more baking stuff. So I kind of like calzone, but it's more like you cut it up and then you have like stuffed cheesy breadsticks. These turned out okay. They tested okay. An earlier batch I tried on my friends, it did not go out too well. They were a little crunchy because I didn't use the proper bake time. Also, I hate recipes that recommend like, hey, use this store-bought like pre-made dough. It's like, fuck that, make your own dough. So I was just kind of guessing with the amount of dough to make. I didn't make enough the first time. That was also a reason why it failed. But anyway, this turned out all right. I still think I could work on it a little bit. But we got 9. We got 9 things to go through. Hopefully you like these longer videos. If you don't like Trough videos, you can skip this. Otherwise, it's probably going to be like an hour. Oh, it's fucking midnight. It's probably going to be over an hour that I'm recording this. And then I have to edit it all and then upload it tomorrow. I'm also writing that chapter. Whatever. I do it for you. I do it for you. I'm sorry if I sound like really tired and upset. That was like 6 fucking hours of my life playing that fucking game. I'm so angry. All right, I'm going to list some of the titles that we're going to be going through. We have Bizarchives, issue 6. More of the same from them, where it's kind of like occulty, pulpy, weird short stories. We have Aegeon, issue 9. This is more sci-fi kind of. We have a few more serials in here, and just more of the same good stuff. We have 2 books by this guy, Alex T. Ratcliffe. One is Battle Games, which is sort of like an anime, like sports anime kind of book, and the other is about a homesteader surviving the kind of apocalypse. Hapless Homesteader. Those ones, we'll talk about them. They're not so much recommendations, but there's still a lot to talk about. Double Dealer issue 12. I didn't really care for issue 11, but issue 12, there was a lot in here that I did enjoy, with another anthology of little short stories. We have another book by Arbogast. Arbogast appears in several of these books. This guy gets around a lot. He's doing a lot of writing. This is Heartbreak and Lechery. We are in Florida. It's seedy, it's greasy, it's ugly. It's a little, I think just shy of 100 pages, little noir story. Very good. I liked it quite a bit. There was also a choose-your-own-adventure game called Orphan, and we're going to talk about that later on. There'll be I guess I'm leaving this part in. I'll probably have a little rant before I get into that, so you could skip that rant if you want to have timestamps for it. Otherwise, I guess it stayed in the video. I'm going to touch on Beowulf, which, I'll have something to say about that. That's just part of like a little reading group I'm a part of, and we talked about Beowulf. And then our big boy, like the largest book this month, is Dierock88. This is a sci-fi epic. It's like on this grand scale with this large cast of characters. I don't usually love books like this. Even for like fantasy, I don't like love huge fantasy books typically. And same with like sci-fi. But I did like this. I had a couple issues with it, but overall I enjoyed it. That's just about a young man and his father. They're salvagers on this like space station. And then the boy Atlas ends up getting arrested alongside his father because they think his father is this terrorist war. So that's a whole thing. So I have links down below for you to purchase these books for yourselves. This video is going to have spoilers for all these titles. And I also have timestamps down below because I know there's a lot to get through. So skip around if you don't care about this title or that title, or you want to jump to whatever it is you want. And I'll have a little update at the end about just what's going on with the channel. Sorry for no uploads for a month. I have been working on it. It's taking far longer than I wanted. I'll definitely have to kind of work on my timing and stuff going forward with video releases and such. So we're going to start with the big boy first. This is Dierock88. This is the Cosmon Utai Book 1, and it's written by S.A. Ernster. And like I said, it's about a young man named Atlas. He lives on the space station. They're scrappers. They're barely getting by, but it's an all right life. Atlas, he doesn't love it though, because he wants to see more of what the universe can offer him, and he's stuck in this very small world, right? Our opening scene has Atlas working alone, which is against the rules because you're out in space by yourself, and it's very dangerous to work alone. But he's trying to explore the ship called the Dissenter, and it's from I guess just kind of a sci-fi trope thing, but there's always and then they went to war with AI, and then the humans beat the AI, and now they're no longer allowed to have AI because AI went crazy. So this ship is a relic from that war. He almost gets killed out there, but his dad saves him along with his crew, and Atlas still wants this glory and adventures beyond the salvage belt. But for now, this is the best that he can do. And he has this just drive and enthusiasm that no one else seems to share around him in his life. One thing, and I'll touch on this more as I get into the book, but Atlas, for a teen boy, I think he's 17, he is very emotional. He's very in touch with his emotions. He's very open about crying, upset, and all of that. And it didn't feel the most authentic to me. It felt it didn't quite feel right for him to be this emotional, to be this crying. It always just seems like he's on the verge of crying. On 14, he's looking at his dad, he's oh, I can't cry, I'm no longer a little boy. So he just wills his emotions to subside. It's seems like every little thing kind of gets to Atlas. He's always about to cry. A small thing, but there are other examples later on. But another thing is the large cast of characters. We have Pyros, who is Atlas's father. We have Adonis and Velis, who are a part of the salvaging crew. We have Ed, who is a merchant who buys some of the scrap that they get and things that they find. We have Nera, who's his daughter. Then we have Xena, who is Atlas's childhood friend that he's in love with. We have Tess, who's also part of the salvaging crew. And I'll add characters as we go on, but it's a big cast. The book is about 500 pages. That was a point of concern for me, where it's we have a lot of plates, spinning in the air here, just with everyone, and they all have their own little secrets and histories and relationships, and it's quite a bit to juggle. And does everyone get enough time, really? Okay, so Atlas is sent by his father to go to Ed with some stuff to sell. Ed's daughter Nera is there, and Nera is in love with Atlas. And I just love it. I know this is a really small thing, but we have Nera and Xena, and their names are almost identical. If you flip that N on its side, then they basically are. You know what I mean? It's all perfect. She's just the opposite of Xena. We have on 32, the door slid open, and Nera, of short stature and what appeared to be heavy layer of makeup, peeked out with a bright smile. Atlas. I love her. She's not in the book that long, but I really love Nera. And Xena, there's a little tension there because he hasn't told her how he really feels about her, and she is leaving soon to go to college and stuff, and he's just kind of this worthless, I guess their version of a townie, where he's gonna be stuck on the space station probably until he dies, unless he changes something. And we get some backstory. There's a war in the past between the nobility and kind of the rest. It seems like the nobles lost the war, and there was this terrorist known as Typhon who killed the Argegetis, which is like their supreme ruler. But I guess the Argegetis wasn't a part of the nobility, and Typhon was fighting along with the nobles, so there's something there. But he kind of falls back into his normal routine, just working the salvage with his dad. But then on page 61, Atlas sees something strange, and it's a black top seemed to meld with the void, yet it was even darker, like a mysterious tear in the fabric of space, and it causes him all this pain, and it's like he can see this object just beyond his reach, but no one else can see it. So we have a little more of Atlas. But all this falls apart when some soldiers wake up Atlas in the middle of the night, and they've arrested his father. They've arrested him because his dad sold some stuff to Ed, and Ed turns them in. It turns out that some of the items that they were selling were a part of, they were tied to Typhon the terrorist, so they've labeled Pyros as Typhon the terrorist, and they've arrested Atlas really on no charges. It's just like, you know this terrorist, so you're going to fucking jail forever kind of a deal. And he gets sold into indentured servitude to Horizon, which is one of the largest corporations in the galaxy. And he's basically going to be a prisoner who can work his debt off on this moon known as Dierock88. While his father, he's told, lives on this frozen planet that you can actually see from the moon, but that's like a really bad prison. Even though he's in a very fucking bad prison, that's a really bad prison where his dad is. And he meets Aurelia Emerald, who is a tech weaver who's with Vanguard, and tech weavers are people that have interacted with alien technology, and the Cosmon Utai are the aliens that left a bunch of shit behind, and she's a part of this group Vanguard, and they're not on great terms with the government because they kind of do maybe some illegal shady shit every now and then. But Aurelia is not the boss of Dierock88. This is this other guy called Calidus Praeses, and he is the overseer here, and he really doesn't like Atlas because he doesn't like Pyros, and he's going to be stuck on this moon. He's going to be extracting crystals, and they use these crystals for space travel, and that's going to be his job forever. And I can understand Atlas at first, where he's just more scared than angry because his entire life is upside down, but he's just he's not really angry yet. It takes him a long time to kind of build up to his anger, right? But he's meeting people. He meets this old man named Archie, who seems like a nice enough guy. He meets his housemates because he's going to be living in this little domicile with a few other people. They all seem nice enough. We have Lucian, who's an asshole, and he's with Athea. We have Decius Oren, who is not an indentured servitude like the rest of them. He's a free man. He is their personal boss. We have Herm. We have Mags. We have Fee, who is an old woman. We have Ob, who is a younger guy. Mags is a younger guy too. Herm is, middle-aged man. And then we have, that's basically their crew. Yeah, it's a pretty large cast of characters here, but it is a longer book. Oh, and Atlas basically has enough debt here to where he will be ancient by the time he gets out, if he ever gets out. So he's basically here for life. And he's not really thinking about escape yet. It does take him a long time to get to that as well. But I guess he's just kind of getting used to everything. They tell Atlas that they monitor their mental health each month, and if they fail a mental health check, they end up watching a propaganda movie, which is designed to rewire their brains, and they're oh, that's really cool. I hope they use that. They do use that, but we'll get to that later. And yeah, Atlas is just kind of getting introduced to everything. On page 135, this is their first time going underneath to go look for the crystals, so they can go they mark out where the crystals are, and then crews later on will come by to go get the crystals. There's also maybe monsters down there that people joke about, but they actually do run into monsters. They run into them pretty early, and they're just these little beetle things. This does happen on their first trip, and I thought that maybe like there could have been a little build up here. Like there is an explanation later on where it's like, wow, they seem to run into monsters a lot, but I still feel like making the first trip kind of like the boring kind of like a control experiment. You know what I mean? So it's just like, okay, this is how things typically are, and then aha, here's the shocking thing. So I felt like maybe could have used that. And they take care of the beetles like pretty well. Atlas kind of fucks up his arm a bit because they're not given the best equipment. And if they want better equipment, they either have to wait until it's completely inoperable and then like Horizon will replace it, or they can buy their own shit. So not a great system for them. And he's stuck working with Herm, who seems like an okay-ish guy. But later on, when Atlas is just kind of exploring, they have like a little park and garden that they can go through. And then he ends up finding a woman in there who's just kind of a worker as well, but she's just hiding out in this park. And she's doing this because she's pregnant. And the company obviously doesn't want to pay for women to go through pregnancy and then dealing with paying for like childcare for the baby, the woman being out of work, right, to care for the baby. And then when she's like late in her pregnancy, obviously she can't work. So they just terminate all pregnancy within like the Dierock88 system. But there's not really much he can do for this woman, and she just kind of runs off into the little forest there. And he has a conversation with Artie about it. And Artie's just like a older guy who just shows up. He gives them some like wise advice, and that's kind of his role. And he's there to explain to him like how things are, like how things really work around here, sort of a deal. And on 151, we have Atlas. He raised his fist impulsively as if to strike something, but he controlled himself at the last second, letting himself drop onto his bed. I want him to get angry. He is almost angry here. He's quick to cry. He's quick to get emotional, but he's not quick to express his anger. And I feel like for like a genuine, just kind of young guy who's had his whole life fucked up, he would get angry. He would fucking smash something, like smash up that room, get in someone's face, scream at him, break something, and then, you know, you could even do something like dystopic with like the Horizon Corporation that makes you pay for everything. Like you smash up your crappy little like copy paste room that looks like everyone else's room, and then you go doo-doo-doo. You owe us like 10,000 more credits because you smashed up your crappy little like, I guess like future IKEA room. You know what I mean? Something like wrath, anger. Like he's been ripped away from his father. He's been ripped away from his friends, his love, who he didn't get to confess to before being yanked away. He's been falsely imprisoned on basically no real charges. He's not been given a fair trial, but he's very like slow and hesitant to express that anger. So that was something that I felt like it could use a little work. We do have the housemates are called a fake family. That everyone's a little like two-faced with each other. This is more said than shown for me, because it feels like they're all fairly nice to each other, and like no one like in their little like group actually kind of like fucks each other over. Like Lucien, he's kind of a douchebag. He's kind of a smartass, but he's never like malicious or cruel to anybody, right? Like not like really deliberately. So where it's like, yeah, this is all fake family and bullshit, but it's like, well, they all kind of have each other's backs, you know, when shit kind of gets hard, you know, they all kind of cover for each other and look out for everyone. So in regards to like the smashing stuff up or like showing more anger, Thelma and Louise, horrible movie, like definitely a terrible movie and all that. But there is a clip of it I like where it's like Thelma's boyfriend, they've been dating for several years and she's on the run. She just asks him for money and to not ask her about anything, because if she tells him anything, then he's going to be like then he'll be like culpable and he could be charged something by the police, you know, for like aiding and abetting fugitives. So, but he feels like he's going to lose the woman of his life, you know, the love of his life. And he kind of smashes up this hotel room, but it felt very genuine there, right? A bad movie, but like good scene here where it's like we have this male character and he just fucking loses it emotionally. And he takes it out on this room. And that felt like really, really believable. So I guess I wanted like more of that. He's a little too like hesitant to show his wrath. And I think anger's good for a character, even if it's a little like irrational, I think that would have fit.
Are you just gonna leave for fucking ever? What, you fucking kill somebody?
You start this shit, I'm out of here.
I'm sorry.
Oh, they find like a crazy guy down there who's like one of the Horizon workers, and he just decided, I'm going to live in the mines now. I don't want to work anymore. And this guy tries to fight him, so Atlas just like burns him alive with his flamethrower, and he fucking cries on page 171. He's fucking crying about it. Tears of warmth trickled down his cheeks as he began to question his father's if his father's identity even mattered now. Maybe he's a terrorist, and now we're both murderers. Shut up, fucking crybaby. Oh, I killed a man. How can I go on with my life? Shut the fuck up. You know a book where you have zero crying and it's just about Sigma males? Duelahan. That's just about alpha men who show no emotions. That's what that book is. Yeah. You gotta show your own shit sometimes. Oh, and then we have some more intrigue where they're out just at a bar. Because like they have like decent like free range on this place. And they go out to a bar and then he sees Artie speaking with Aurelia Emerald, the woman who's a tech weaver and from Vanguard that he met when he first entered the prison. So I'm like, okay. We had this interesting moment on page 206 where Ob is like a quiet, really strong guy who's about Atlas's age, a bit older than him. Lucian says, "Whoa there, android," to Ob, and Ob kind of freaks out. He's like gripping something incredibly tight when Lucian says that. It's just supposed to be a joke, and we never get confirmation in this book, but I guess Ob is something. Maybe he's an android, maybe he's cybernetically enhanced or something. We know AI isn't really allowed in this world, but it's got to mean something. That was just a little point of interest. Oh, and then on page 208, Mags is talking to Atlas about there's this meeting going on tonight about people who still dream. This is about people that dream of getting out of here someday. And then on page 210, Herm is talking to him about the like beetles and the other monsters. And they think that they're an alien creation because they are weird. They're like organic, but also mechanical. And like the big guy, which is like kind of a metal octopus thing, it can also like teleport. And like, why would the aliens create these things? But they did create them. They're just all kind of around. But interesting stuff going on. That special meeting that Mags brought up, it turns out there's this band that people listen to, and it's just a lot of anti-Horizon sentiment there, and things get out of control, turns into a riot. We had a good line on page 238. He kept glancing at his boot, expecting to see a trail of blood chasing him. I like that, but things get a little nasty. Definitely people get killed, and yeah, pretty horrible. And Atlas definitely like wants to get out of here now. Like the idea of escape has really dawned on him, and he really can't just stay here. Oh, and when he's down in the caves, Atlas sometimes sees things, and it's like a strange green dot. And it only really happens in the caves, and it's very specific, and he doesn't really know where to begin with it. But it seems like it's connected somehow to what he was seeing out in space with his father, right? But we have our first death on page 260, and this is Herm. And I didn't think Herm was like bad. Like Atlas knew him a little bit. They drank together, I think, once. But Herm is just like kind of a name on like a pretty large cast of characters. So it's like, okay. I didn't know him like super well. And it's like, I don't know. I felt like maybe he could have used a little more time. Or maybe there could have been like a tighter, more focused cast so that Herm's death would have more of an impact. because I don't know, like the other characters really don't like talk about him or like reference him anymore. Like kind of after this point, Atlas brings him up when he's like reflecting on the people who have died, you know, at the end when they're about to leave. So yeah, we get more of like drama about the characters. We have Mags, he liked Athea, like there's some unrequited love there, and then Lucian came and ruined all that. Fee, the old woman, she was a pirate. She had the chance to escape that life with her son, and she didn't take it, and she kind of wants to make it right with him if she ever gets out of there. On page 282, Alice has this weird vision with his dad, and then there's like an explosion thing, but he was like saved by like these weird green orbs. So there's definitely something going on. Mags is also able to see it. So yeah, some weird stuff going on. And then we have 302. They managed to get a message from his father to him because Fee is related to Tess. And I like Tess. We didn't see Tess too much, but she's also like an older woman. Literally, like, almost every woman, I think, is interested in Atlas, which is fine. Oh, and in the message, because they can't just, it's not like a phone call, his father's just able to leave a message for him. He says, don't trust Vanguard no matter what. And Mags is doing some research about the Argigitis. And then so he finds this, like, photograph of some, like, charity event that was being hosted. And one of the guests there was a woman from Vanguard. And then the woman in the photo, who he recognizes as his mother, whose father said has been dead for many years, is the head of Vanguard. Ooh, we got some stuff. I did like it 309, where he has lost it. He has gotten emotional. He didn't know where he was headed, but he knew he was simply done with everything and everyone. So he goes around, and then he finds a Horizon Guard, and he just beats the shit out of him, and then he gets thrown into solitary confinement for a little bit. But it was nice where it's like, boom, he finally shows a little emotion. He finally shows a little wrath. I was happy about that, to finally get there. Oh, and then on page 318, so every chapter has like like in video games, sometimes for like loading screens, it has like little entries or whatever about like the world or like a thing. So this has that for each chapter. It's like, here's something like a quote from this character who we haven't met yet or something like that. On page 318, though, we have this from Titus Marcellus. I'm in delegating a straightforward task to my sibling. The outcome was predictably disastrous. The facility succumbed to flames under her watch. Within her blunder, however, was a most interesting mistake. A subject escaped into... Yes, I'm like a little mixed on these because each chapter has these, but for the most part they feel irrelevant because I don't have enough like context to really like understand them or appreciate them. It's like proper noun spouts something about other proper nouns, and like you do pick up more later for some of these, like they do make more sense, but I think it's something where I would probably like and appreciate them more. Like if I read, I don't know how many books this is supposed to be, but like a trilogy or whatever, and then it's like, okay, now these make more sense to me. But some of them do work, like on page 357, because Athea, she was actually a journalist who was imprisoned, and that's why she's in Horizon, and we have a few like entries from Athea from her time being a journalist, and I'm like, that was really cool. I like that. So some of them do work, but I think this one works more because we know Athea, so we do have more context, and we can appreciate this. So I guess if they were like more tied to characters that we knew, I would just like them more. So they're plotting their escape and everything. Atlas feels like he can't really trust anyone. Well, he can trust like his little crew, like his dad or even his mom, who's supposedly alive. He doesn't know what to do with any of that. It's just too much for him. And then on one of their excavation missions, they end up finding an alien ship that's buried deep underground. It's on page 397, and it has an AI on it that's like an alien AI, and it has chosen Atlas as like its avatar, you know, and it's only going to like fly out of there with Atlas. So they have the ship problem figured out about how to get off the planet. There's another riot going on. Artie has stirred this up. And on page 435, the riot gets bloody. There's this woman, Kalia, who he rescued earlier from, I think, the first riot. And he watches her die. And he says, I barely knew you, but he still cries about it because this is very emotional. His stoicism, that means nothing to this man. Stoicism means nothing to him. I actually made a list of all the times that Atlas gets emotional / cries like a little bitch. I will go through this list right now, actually. Page 81, this is after Atlas has been arrested and he's thrown into his cell. Atlas sank to the frigid floor and wept. Oh my God, ridiculous. Page 90, he longed to weep. Page 151, he raised his pulse and fist impulsively as if to strike something, but he controlled himself at the last second. Page 160, Atlas laughed as if it were all a joke, but tears stung at the corners of his eyes and anger boiled deep within. Page 71, he cries. Page 173, an impulse to strike out overcame him, and he found himself clenching his own hair in agony. Smash something, smash something, smash something. Let it out. Let the monster out. I think he takes too long to let it out. I do understand that, he does eventually let it out, and then he, beats the shit out of that guard, but I feel like he could have had, little outbursts before where he's just, smashing something inanimate, and then we get to that. Yeah, and then 435, where that woman, Celia, just dies. A grief-stricken sob escaped his throat, and he struggled to slow his breathing. I don't know. I'm not, the most emotional guy. My father really didn't approve of that type of thing. And my father kind of raised me with tough love, and, I turned out fine.
Cry. 1, 2, 3, cry. 1, 2, 3, cry. Come on. Come on, baby. Come on, little girl. Cry. Cry. My favorite daughter, Ben. I swear to God, you're my sweetest little girl.
They did go through, the brain treatment thing when they all failed the mental health check after Herm died. So they did, Herm's death did have an impact, but it felt like the effects of, I thought that machine thing would kind of screw them up a bit more, but they all seemed to kind of get over it after a while, fairly quickly. Maybe if they had left more of a lasting impact, I would have held Herm's death in higher regard. But everything is, in a full-on, just a riot. Everything's just chaos. Artie, turns out that he is a brother to the Archegedius, and he was imprisoned because he tried to overthrow his brother, and he killed their other sibling. And Calidus, who's just the cruel overseer who hates Atlas, he dies on page 459. And it's just a little unsatisfying because Atlas doesn't do anything against him. It's just a crowd of people kill Calidus. And he wasn't a great villain or anything. I would say that maybe that's something that's a little lacking in this book. Is Calidus isn't much of a villain. He doesn't have too much of a role in Atlas's life. And Artie, he escapes to fight another day. He just kind of slinks off with some of his goons. He will probably come back later at some. But the villains were a little kind of a letdown. Oh, and they need some special equipment to blast enough rock for them to get the AI ship out of there. And this crew that they need, who has the equipment, they're called the 7 A's. There's Lyra, Apollos, and Edor, and all these people now join them. And I was kind of concerned here because I'm are we going to buckle under the weight of all these characters? But as they're about to get the ship out, they got the Archtopus in there. And they have a little battle there. Fee is killed. And I know this maybe sounds bad, but I'm well, if we're going to lose someone, I guess I'm okay with it being Fee because she seemed a lot like Tess, but Tess is just younger. So I'm I guess better Fee than someone else. Maybe that's not great, but I'm oh well. And then on 485, Atlas says he still didn't know how, but he knew beyond a doubt that he would raise Orion for Herm and Fee, for Gage and his band, and the pregnant woman in the garden. Anyone and everyone who had suffered at their hands. And I'm okay. I care about Fee, that she's dead, and I felt like she was a fine character, but I'm like, yeah, if we gotta lose someone, Fee's fine. Herm, I don't think we knew that much. For Gage and his band, we didn't really know him at all. The pregnant woman in the garden is just like more of an example of like the cruelty of this place. There is like Celia too, but the only one I care about, I guess, is more like Fee. And that's it. They bust out of prison. They're flying in their alien spaceship. You know, they managed to break away with their new crew. And Atlas doesn't know what's going on. Oh, and there's news that his father has been like broken out of prison by like some colonel that's gone rogue. So that there's their faction. Aurelia Emerald, she was there to try to get Atlas out. But he ended up leaving her, and she got picked up by Vanguard, and he briefly sees his mother in a Vanguard spaceship. So, yeah, there are a lot of balls in play. There's a lot set up for the next book and all that, because like there's this full-scale like rebellion/war between many factions. A lot of stuff going on. I think there's promise for like new and better and more compelling villains. I think there are perhaps too many characters though, but we will see for that. But definitely I would read the next book going forward. As I said, I had some complaints. No, it's just like Atlas being more like emotional, but not emotional in, I think, like a more masculine way, where he's like kind of enraged and angry, and he's like looking for an escape soon, or he's like taking his anger out on something. So he felt a little inauthentic at times. Yeah, like the large cast meant that not all characters could really get as much development as they could. And it's like, well, now going forward, you know what I mean? Like we lose Fee, and then 3 new characters join up, and like they all have their backstories and their history. So can they all be handled well in a satisfying way? I'm not sure. Oh, and small scraps, just like little editing things. There weren't too many, but we had page 71, especially if they're drunk. Tess chimed in, folding her arms in defeat as she twisted he mouth in displeasure, her mouth. We had page 100. He had never given it much thought before. Given page 207. This one, this one, it seems like there's an extra space between a T and an H in there. But I'll get into that a little bit with some with this kind of spacing issue. 265. Instead, he sat there hating himself and everyone, one and thing around him, and hating himself and everyone and everything around him. I think that would be 364. Heading to Obe's room this late, but his curiosity spurred his steps. I don't know why, but there's a dash between CU dash and Rosity. Like, I don't know why. It doesn't like do that anywhere else. So I don't know. I thought that was a little strange. I don't know if whatever like writing program just did that automatically. But it just looked very odd. 433. Okay, this is like something that I saw earlier, which like the TH and the there, where some of these words, I'll have a photo of it, they have like just extra spaces in between them, and it's just odd. I don't really know why that's there. It doesn't really appear too much in the book, but it happened every. And then on page 443, we had words that were just too close together. Yeah, I'm not really sure what the deal was there, but it wasn't like a huge thing, but it is something that I did notice. Maybe that was just like an Amazon printing issue. I'm not really sure. We had page 449, Alphelion stars your hard 2, please. Wrong 2. Get rid of the extra O. And then page 473. She never uttered another word, choosing to close her eyes and lean her head back towards the ceiling. Close. But overall, very good editing and all that. For like 500 pages, this is like nothing. None of them are like a huge deal or anything. But I don't know. I do small scraps. I'll probably still keep that section in. Just because I kind of do it for everyone. All right, boys. And now we're on to Double Dealer issue 12. In the last Trough video, I didn't really care for issue 11. I thought it was fine, not great. But this one, this is a recommendation. I do like the cover more as well. Issue 11, it's like kind of this neo kind of style. I don't know. It's just like shapes and it's like a city, I guess. But this one has character, right? We got the covered wagon going alongside a sedan on the road, and it's like, that's character. I like this more. Our first one is like not really a story. It's kind of just going over the Greek myth of Tantalus. So it's about Tantalus, who in death, he's trapped in Tartarus. And when he goes to drink some water because he's thirsty, the water would recede. And whenever he would reach for an apple on a tree branch, the branch would sway out of his reach. And he's charged with eating human flesh / like trying to be the gods. It's kind of like I'm mispronouncing this, but apotheosis, like when human becomes divine. And this is just not so much a story, but it's just like thinking about Tantalus. We're considering Tantalus, and then just like different interpretations of the myth and like motivations behind why did Tantalus try to serve his own son to the gods? Was he trying to become a god? But it was interesting. I just like mythology, so that was a nice one to start with. Hippopotamus. This is about 3 brothers that are going to move this box for a man named the Hippo, who's in jail but is getting out soon. We don't know what's in it. It's about Red, Julius, and Tola. Julius has gotten out of jail recently and he wants to go straight. But the brothers still have to do this for the Hippo, who I guess is sort of like their boss, or kind of runs their little criminal outfit. I thought this was like funny. I thought it was all right. I did like this on page 12 because they're on their way to get this box for the Hippo, which maybe has evidence or something, or what's in the box. Doesn't matter. Just the Hippo asked for it. But there's some people out there. Red motioned them down against the box and deeper in the small hedge. He checked his watch again. Fuck was all that ticked across. That's a nice line. But I think it gets like a little philosophical and a little too into itself. And if it was played straight, I would like it a little more. Julius, they think gets captured at one point and they don't see him for a long time. But then he just shows up once the Hippo arrives and he shoots the Hippo. And I'm like, okay, I guess. Getting noticed. This is about a guy who likes to purchase expensive clothes to feel better about himself. He has a merce, which is a real thing apparently. It is a man purse, and he ends up getting mugged, and he's this little crybaby. It has a good voice. It's not a very long story, but it has really nice voice for this guy and getting into his head. The story, like the clothing brands that he always goes to, is shutting down. So what does this mean for him? Does he have to develop a personality on his own? Can he? I liked it. Checking in. This is about a guy who used to hang out with this group of amateur riders. There's one great rider in the group that they all respected, and then that person just left one day, and everyone else just went on with their lives. One day, he decides to just email this the really good rider, and the guy actually responds, and he goes to visit him. He inherited some money, so he does nothing with his life. He just lives in hotels and like pre-prepared food. He thinks the only task you have in life is to be comfortable and unengaged. Our main character, thankfully, doesn't agree with him, calls him a lesser version of himself, and thinks that, well, we are on this planet, so we should try to be useful to each other and help each other. Crimson Veil. So we have a PI, Hooks. He's looking at a murder-suicide. The wife was a client of his, and he found her husband cheating on her. He's in this corrupt city, but he's going to do his best. This was nice. It was kind of standard noir stuff, but if you like that, I think it works well. Last Architect. This one was a little strange for me. So this is after the final battle between like good and evil, heaven and hell. Part of God's architects are still like on Earth. Our main character's been in like 7 different bodies because he just like transfers bodies every once in a while. There's some demon in a wall that's near him. He's searching for something. There's a lot going on. A bit too much for me. There's this demon named Rose that he kissed at a club, and they're supposed to meet later. There's too much world here. This is too much for a short story. Maybe if this was in a novel or in an expanded format, sure. I don't think this would work as a serial. I think the world's just a little too detailed, right? And in the editor's note, that one of these short stories is going to be like the beginning to a novel. It's going to be Crimson Veil, the little noir one. I thought it was actually The Last Architect because that made the most sense to me. I think, yeah, there's just a bit too much going on there. We have The Algorithm by Arbogast. This is about a man named Colton. He moved recently out into the country to be alone and like throw parties out there. He was dating this girl named Alice who was obsessed with him, and he just threw her away, and then she killed herself. Jumped off a bridge, I believe. He has a playlist, because he's kind of a sadistic fuck, named Alice is Dead. And this is going to be a weird little tangent, but I remember there being like a series of Flash games that were like alternative Alice in Wonderland stories, and they were called Alice is Dead. I will throw some of it up on the screen. I think there's like even music attached to it, but I remember they're just like weird. It's just like Wonderland, but it's really fucked up. That's how they usually do Wonderland. It's never like a nicer place. He's literally jerking off to violence against women. Then he starts to hear thuds. There's weird phone calls, music that turns on, music that gets added to his playlist that he didn't put there. He hears a woman's voice just driving him insane. He doesn't know what's happening. And then a man comes and tells him to turn it down. And then when this guy looks at his computer, there's a bunch of like fake shit on there about him like looking at a bunch of like disgusting stuff. And that he was responsible for his girlfriend's death, which is true, but not in the photos that are being shown. And then he ends up attacking this dude and he plans to toss him in the river, just like Alice. I like this. This is nice. The Abyss. We have a man who is alone in the world. He's been alone for a long time. He finds a pit, an abyss, and he climbs down a rope, and he tries to go back up, but he falls. The man becomes the abyss. He kills a new person on the rope who comes down. If you stare into the abyss, it stares back into you. I thought it was fine, but I didn't really care for this one. Small scraps, there were only a few. Page 23, Tola regretted said that. Page 24, it aches all to hell. Oh, okay, I see on page 24. It doesn't have a starting quotation mark. Page 73, they pulled up on the screen in front of him was his bookmarks. This is just like a sentence that's worded pretty weird. They pulled up on the screen in front of him was his bookmarks page. Like his bookmarks page pulled up in front of him on the screen. Something. Just reword that. Yeah, I thought that was pretty decent. I liked Concerning Tantalus the most. Getting Noticed was good. Crimson Veil. Algorithm. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty decent little anthology. Heartbreak and Lechery. This is by Arbogast. So we have a short noir tale set in Florida. It's 86 pages long. It's a fun story. I hope there's more to come. So the prologue, I have to say it. I have to address it. The first sentence of this story is just wonderful. So, Heartbreak and Lechery, we have a man named Sandy. He is a PI, but kind of a crappy PI. They're in Florida. He's investigating a missing girl. The woman's sister hires him to go look for her. There's human trafficking involved. There's mobsters. Yeah, there's a lot in here. So, if that sounds interesting, go check it out. But first sentence of the prologue is, the night was so hot that Radley could not think about pussy at all. You get so much character here. You get so much character here. This is one of like the best opening lines I've really read. This is great. But we're just stuck with these two lowlives. We have Radley and Marty. They are pretty low on the totem pole, and they're supposed to pick up a girl, and then they get attacked by this sedan that crashes into Greg, who's like the third man, a part of this team, and the girl gets taken from them. Not our protagonists, but they're very entertaining. And we also have Carl Mick, who is up the ladder, and he runs this crew. Well, he works out of a union hall, and these guys just report to him. And Carl, he's not the big boss, but he's trying to get his own like little private empire going one day, because one day the big boss will go down, and the boss has fallen for Marie Brewbreaker, who is the girl who was kidnapped. And they decide, and they can't figure out if their crew is like playing a game, and they set up to have like a fake kidnapping of Marie or not, so they hire Pete, a motorcycle guy, to sniff around. Then in chapter 2, we have Sandy Preston, who is RPI. He is waiting outside the house where his ex-girlfriend Christian lives. He left her to go on an adventure around the world, and then he came back and didn't know what to do with himself. And she didn't really want anything to do with him because he just kind of left one day. Yeah, but he still hung up. He's like a little pathetic dude. He's like, I don't know if charming's the right word. He's just like so pathetic that you feel bad for him. I guess that's the best way to say it. He gets a client, and this is a woman named Cindy. She is the sister of Marie. So Marie was kidnapped. Apparently Marie used to run a blackmail scam. Like, she would sleep with guys, and then they would have Greg film the whole thing, and then they would claim that Marie, who looks pretty young, was under the age of 18. So these guys would pay money to not like be charged with like child porn, or you know what I mean, like a statutory rape. Even though she was over the age of 18, it didn't, these guys are just freaking out, so that's what they do. Some backstory on Sandy, and Sandy's kind of a leftist. He went to like, I don't know, there's some shit in Syria a couple years ago. I really didn't give a fuck about any of that, but that's who Sandy is. So this was an interesting choice by Arbogast. Whatever, interesting enough. On the trail to go find Greg Beard, who he thinks will be the best lead that he has. So on the trail, he stops at a bar. He gets in a fight with a guy. We have this... he gets in a fight with this guy who thinks that Sandy is very rude. And we had this weird moment on page 29. They're angry that he kept using the Lord's name in vain in the bar. We have to keep order. We have to keep the order so we can keep drinking. You damn near caused her to turn off the taps for the night, and that can't happen. And that can't happen ever. It's almost like a little Lovecraftian there. Or maybe they're just like drunk losers, whatever. And then Sandy is just outside. He just got his ass beat a little bit. Sandy listened to a bar that sounded more festive and friendly than the one he had walked into just an hour earlier. I don't think it's been an hour. I think maybe he's been there for 15, 20 minutes. The timeline doesn't quite add up for me. But after that, he finds Greg's house, and he's sniffing around. He goes to the local high school because Greg hangs out there, I guess, to deal drugs. And then he finds Greg dead at the school. And then on Greg's phone, he's been talking to a guy named Radley. We don't have too many heroes here, but we do have victims. Like Sandy is just kind of a groveling and pathetic guy, but he gets in contact with Radley, and the story gets like very, very ugly, where Radley takes him back to a house, and there's two girls tied up in a bathroom. They've been here for 3 days. Marty Silverman sold Marissa and her friend to these guys to pay off a debt. And Sandy almost kills Radley. Probably should have, but that might be above him. Like, he's never like killed anybody, but he gets close here. So he saves these two girls. And then he's hunting down Marty, who has already been stabbed and is dying. And Marty can't give him too much information before he just dies. So someone else is running around and doing these killings. We don't know if it's Pete. We don't know what exactly is going on. But now Sandy's on the case, and he has a sit down with Carl Mick, and Carl Mick ends up drugging him, but he's able to escape, and then he's running back. He has no leads, he has nothing, so he returns to Cindy with hat in hand, but things don't go great there, and Cindy attacks him from behind, and he wakes up in the basement with a tied up Marie next, and Marie tells us that she had a little baby, Xander, and Marie and Cindy is the one who has put Marie down here, and she took Xander in a freezer and just left the baby there to die. So Marie had to listen to her baby die for hours. And like, while Marie is definitely a victim, she doesn't even really care. She doesn't want revenge for her baby. She doesn't want to get even. She just wants to get out of here so she can start making more money again. Cindy reveals that she hired him to be a chaos agent and just to kind of stir shit. She thinks that she came to the house because he had figured it all out, and he doesn't correct her on that. But he's able to talk her into letting him go, so there's going to be less cleanup for her. I found this kind of iffy. I was like liking the story, but I think it stumbled a little bit at the end. It doesn't seem like a dumb woman, and she did kill a baby, and she also killed Greg and Marty, and she's kind of a fucked up person. And if she's able to drag Sandy down the stairs, she could drag him a few extra feet and just put him in the freezer. Given there would be cleanup there, and there is a connection between Sandy and herself, but I just don't quite believe it. And she also just unties him, and Cindy doesn't have any weapon here, not that I saw described. So this just feels really dumb. I think like if you just added like if Cindy had a gun in her hand or a gun like just in her pocket or in a holster, whatever, then I would believe it more. But I just don't believe that a woman would just untie this guy. She has no weapon. There's no reason why Sandy can't just like overpower her and just beat the shit out of her. So I just didn't quite believe it. I think if you just add like she had a gun, then like, okay, I believe it. And then Sandy goes upstairs. He pretended to leave, and he calls the police, and he's waiting for the police. But I feel like he could have just gone down there. Like, I don't think you can exactly like lose that fight to Cindy without a weapon. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's kind of wounded, but I think he just wins. And that's the end. Cindy is taken away. Marie doesn't want to talk to Sandy at all, and she just disappears, probably to do more like blackmail shit. He writes Chris a note, and he leaves town. This is good, because he's just too much of a loose cannon. He knows too much, and like you have zero guarantee that he wouldn't like go crying the police for protection and just blame you for everything, which is what he does. So I just didn't quite believe the ending. You know, I would definitely read more. This is entertaining. And now, small scraps. We have page 26. Even the man's black beard and blacker mustached were coated in perspiration. D. And then page 40. We just have like extra space. Look, you work at McCaffrey's, comma. Yeah. Big space. Do you know a bartender around town named Cindy? So I guess just have a question mark after the yeah, and then like bring those together. But yeah, overall, very good. So Bizarchives 6. First off, I want to note that they've changed the formatting, which has some pros and cons, but I did like that the Aegeons are all uniform. They all fit very nicely next to each other on the shelf. The Bizarchives do not. They've changed the format a little bit. I'm looking at them right now on the shelf, and like, yeah, they are not all uniform. I don't know if they're going to go with this style going forward, but this is interesting. You know, this has color. This has a lot more pictures than the previous Bizarchive. Anyways, enough autism. Let's get to the story. So we actually start with some ads for some video games. It reminded me that the guys behind the Great Rebellion are having like a game jam that's going on in May. I think like May 8th or something. And I think I should do some like kind of indie game review or a video on that or something that might come out in like later May. We open with a Lovecraft diet challenge. It's about eating like Howard Phillips Lovecraft. I thought this was interesting. I don't know too much about Lovecraft. I've read some of his stories. I like them. I should probably read more. I should probably finish the Robert E. Howard collection of Conan stories as well. And then we go into a review of the Cultist Simulator by A. Cuthbertson. I had some friends who played this game and they disliked it, you know, and they kind of talked bad on it. I don't know. I might give it a shot. Recently, I played a board game called Slay the Spire, and apparently that was based on a video game that I just hadn't heard of, so I might try out that game at some point. But I don't know. If you kind of like card games, then maybe Cultist Simulator is interesting. I was kind of hoping that there would be a continuation of the Count like Chorlor stories, but that did not happen from Cuthbertson this time. Oh well. We have Necropolis of Smiles. This is about two men. They're sitting together on like a stormy night. Matthews is a man who was somewhat crippled from a failed suicide attempt, and then his friend is a professor. No one knows the details about his suicide. They get into a history about like early America and some piracy and a family that was like involved human sacrifice for like demons and stuff. And at the end, the professor guy has gone crazy when they go to this little island. He has this mask, and he gets struck by lightning, and then all that remains is the mask, and now Matthews is in a insane asylum. So yeah, I thought that one was all right. Then we have another thinking piece. We have Nuke Cthulhu, and it's the possibility of nuking Cthulhu, which I guess technically could happen, but it would just kind of regenerate. So yeah, something to think about. Then we have As the Snow Thaws by Frostcast, and this story is set like after the Ice Age, and we have a man named Brighthand who's vying for the right to marry Elfsoft against his rival Proudhost. He's won all of the marriage rights that he's challenged Proudhost to, but fierce battle, Elfsoft's father still sides with Proud. Bright isn't sure what to do, so he goes like his family's tomb. He meets the ghost of his ancestor, who sends him to go avenge himself. We cut to fierce battle being dead, and then Bright and Elf are cornered by the tribe. They're about to be killed, but one of the elders, he asked to summon the ghost of her dad, and then they remove like a parasite that Proudhost had used to control him. And if you're stuck with this parasite, then that means like you wouldn't be able to meet your ancestors in the afterlife. So they remove that, and then Fierce Battle's able to move on with like his ancestors. And then Proud is killed, and then he's attacked by like his ancestors' ghosts, and then he's like maimed and then abandoned by his ancestors, so he has to wander the afterlife all alone. And then, Elfsoft and Brighthand are getting married, and they're going to hunt down these tribes that are, like, producing these parasites. So, that was nice. Pater Sanguinis. This is about a man named Alistair, who is a professor at a college. He gets a knife, he cuts himself, and then a figure appears, and it starts to take his blood. He tells it to stop and promises to get more blood for the man. He even kills his neighbor, but it's not enough for him. And so then he takes his own life in an attempt to become an equal to Pater, as he wanted, but he is just like in this weird afterlife where he's just one of many servants, and he is forever destined to filter through the grime alteration. He's like literally like removing eels and shit from like these giant pools of blood. So, yeah, sucks. Eyeless Man, this is a short one. This is just a short 2-pager, but it does voice well. And it's about a man named Justin who's going to college, and he becomes a security guard at this mall just in his part-time. Weird things that start to happen. Janitors are leaving. Women complain of a man in the woman's bathroom. There's this horrible rancid smell, and no one was there. And people are seeing this man with no eyes in there. But no one can catch him or anything, but women are still reporting. And at the end, all the women who saw this eyeless man have died. We have The Sea Witch. This is about a man named E4 Williams who's on vacation, and he explores the beach that's now accessible due to the receding tide. He finds this like turquoise figure that's shaped like a woman, but it's aquatic, and it's almost human and has a female face. He's staying at this house with this landlady in need. He's kind of interested in her, but he starts to obsess over this little figurine. He dreams of sex with the landlady, but it's like off, a little like aquatic, and then he smells fish when he wakes up. Kind of gross. He notices a gray mole that he has, and then he starts to get more on his body. He spends a whole day at the water. He's just becoming more abnormal. And then when he returns from the beach, the statue is gone. The lady threw it in the sea. He hits her and he runs towards the water. And then we cut to a fisherman talking about him, saying that E4 was acting crazy and he would scratch himself all over like he had chicken pox and nothing was wrong. And they find him and he's a smiling corpse. The last one is The Pipes of Heaven. We're in second person. We have a man who met a girl named Lydia on a dating app. He has met someone that helped him like explain some weird stuff that's going on. Our man who went on the date is very self-critical. He texted with her, but she never showed up for the date. But then he goes home and he sees pictures of him and her on the date. There's something called Heronir, which is about like mass psychogenic illness, and he ended up finding this guy. And this guy just talks to him. That's like the idea of a place, really goes into the weeds and theorizes stuff and talks. And you just kind of leave the story behind. I think it is self-aware at the end on 64, but I didn't really care for it. It's just like the author is telling you all this stuff, and I felt like it was, and I felt like if you just played it straight as a story, you can give it like the same info, but it would just be more palatable. It kind of read more like a Substack post than like a story. So I think it loses itself a little bit. But overall, like, I like the art. You know, I thought that was interesting. We had, I don't know how this would compare with earlier issues, but I think like, one, it's just in a bigger format, so that means obviously there's going to be less pages. And the pages have a little more care. They have a little more detail to them with the illustrations, so I guess that's a bit of a trade-off. But yeah, like, I don't know. If they go back to the older format or they keep this, I think both work pretty well. Small scraps, I had one on 17. Figure wore a long toga-like garment belted at the waist, but it's spelled W-A-S-T-E instead of W-A-I-S-T. And then on page 21, the mask dimly glowed a funeral white, but has an extra A in funeral at the end. But that was it. So, yeah, more good stuff from the Bizarchives. So, to follow up right behind it, we have Aegeon issue 9. We have more weird sci-fi tales in this anthology. We start with Beyond the Pale. It's kind of like a wacky racer thing, like Mad Max Racing. It's full of action, like from page 1 to the end. They're constantly being chased. It's about a man named Froggy. It's weird. There's a Colossus of Joe Rogan, and it's just upbeat and fun. We have The Duelist. I really enjoyed this one. It's set during World War I. It has there's this German fighting this American in this dogfight, and then there's this weird cloud, and then when they go through it, they are someplace else. And the cloud that took them to this new weird place has vanished. And but there's like some signs of a civilization here. The American ends up crashing because his plane was damaged, but the German saves him. And this place has like stone pillars, and it's kind of like a cathedral almost. But this world has two moons, and the German has the American tied up, but he ends up letting him go because he decides that they're going to need to help each other to figure out a way out. And it looks like these two guys who are fighting each other to the death must now work together to survive in this barren world. There's this weird room with a pyramid, but the German shoves him inside and shuts the door behind him. And something appears that makes Allenby scream and shoot his gun. It looks like the German is working with some monster or something to go, I guess, bring it people. So that was a nice little twist at the end. Survivor of Fern World. These are transcripts of a man who is the sole survivor on a planet that is populated with just ferns. He starts to go mad and see things, and his body starts to change and become green. He eats nothing but ferns, and it's a recording of that. Yeah, this one was fine. Mara and Dizzy, these are about two people who are in like a Candyland / fantasy world who are just driving around in like this little toy car. They don't really know what's going on or why they're there. And they get confronted by a giant black knight chess piece, and then a white knight literally comes in and saves them from the couple. Took some pills, woke up here, and they are taken to the castle. The queen immediately falls in love with Dizzy and wants him, so she makes Mara into a servant, grab out some chamber pots, and then the queen tries to seduce Dizzy, but it turns out the queen was wearing a wig and is in fact not a queen, but is just a black pawn. And then literally the white knight shows back up again and saves them. I did like this little detail that the white knight makes race car sounds whenever he moves, so I like that. And then they drive off into space in the end, and then they wake up back in their apartment and everything is okay. And yeah, this was just a nice fun Ferrand PI. This is a continuation of the serial about Ferrand, who is a private investigator in like the future dystopian world. Kind of, I guess cyberpunk's a good way to describe it. He has a case that sounds familiar. He's looking for a missing husband, but there's some connection between the polymer cult and Brainship, and Ferrand and her end up getting together, but then they are attacked into his apartment and they get chased around. And Ferrand has found something out. He learns that there is no real Van Zam. There's been this huge effort and billions of dollars spent to keep up this ruse. He doesn't know why, but it has something to do with Bosch, and Bosch is the man who made the Polymer Man, and the Polymer Man is here, and he's still like his creepy, like thing, like kind of ooze and flesh and shit. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, there's a lot of artwork scattered throughout by Brendan Hurd and also by Michael Gallo, and those are always great. And then we're on to Max Ryan, and so this is a continuation of that serial about a space marine, and he's been transported to Ramek's realm, has escaped. Well, he hasn't escaped yet, but he's on the run inside Ramek's like palace, killing spree. There's a lot of action, and he gets away, but Ramek will be leading the hunt personally next time, so that'll be exciting. There's an escape maze included, which was interesting. That was definitely different. But yeah, that was a nice, weird little inclusion. And then we have a small comic. This is Tales of the Boar Mercenary. There's this dig going on. Some diary is found, and then a guy flees with it. And then there's also like another little comic made of like IRL photos of Gallo and Hurd about money and like commissioning for some work. Those are nice little new things. We have Proud Return. On Mars, a woman is starting to lose it since the Earth has been destroyed in some kind of war. I thought it was fine, but it was a weaker one. She was a librarian, and that's why she was left behind on Mars with another man, and she ends up just killing the man and I guess herself. But I thought, this is okay. The Sirens. This is another log one that is like the Fern, except it's about a planet of mostly water instead of mostly fern. The crew starts to go insane. They're here to map the ocean, and they start to hear singing, and then the men want to join them. And eventually, crew members are killing themselves. They're throwing themselves overboard, and they're joining these monsters. And for some reason, they just don't want them dead. They want them alive. And the guy is marooned on a little island at the end, really debating joining them or not, because there's no food, there's barely any clean drinking water, and he's just dying slowly, and maybe there is a paradise. So I think I like this one a little less, along with the Survivor of Fern World, just because it's like two stories that kind of go very similar beats, in the same issue. Empire of the Tropics. This is part 3 of a serial, and we had 2 previous serials already in this issue, in Ferrand and in Max Ryan. And those are easy enough to follow. Ferrand's dystopian future. Max Ryan, it's also dystopian future, but he's like a space marine instead of a detective. And those are easy enough just to follow and to pick up. I think this one, again, there's just a bit too much going on, and I don't think it works too well as a serial, because there's just a lot of characters. There's some like political intrigue, and I couldn't remember the stuff that had come before. There's a man named Vasco who's going after Don Miguel. It's like, I don't know. Maybe if it was all collected into something, I'd have a better opinion of it. Oh, there was also a thought piece on immortality and why it wouldn't be good for humans. One, who gets to be immortal? How is it decided? Does everyone get to be immortal? Like even the worst among us? And would the elites who are already really bad, if they were given immortality, just become like even worse now that they're immortal? And the other reason was that humans are not equipped to deal with it. And I thought, those are both good reasons. I think, therefore, this is like a thought piece / not so much of a story. It's kind of like the Human Pipes one from Bizarchives 6, where a guy's talking about like seeing all these universes and choices and their destruction. It's about alternate paths. And it's like, it's fine, but I don't know. It's okay, I guess. Polybus. I like this one quite a bit. This is by Michael Gallo. It's about a man who loves pinball and he fixes machines. He's hired to repair a machine by this guy, and apparently this machine is super rare because it might have been used as like a CIA like glowy psyop thing to just like fuck with people and get them to like think things. It's like an experiment, and he ends up fixing the machine, and it really gets to him. And he tries to go back because he's just obsessed with playing it because he lost hours and hours playing it without realizing it. But the woman living at the house has no idea what he's talking about. But he takes it upon himself to break in. And while the police are being called, and he thinks he's just nuts for breaking into this lady's house, he does find a pinball. So he knows that he's not crazy. Then we have Dream God. This is a continuation of the Dream God stuff. I thought this was all right. I definitely still need to read the Dream God to have a full understanding of it, but I guess if you have read Dream God then and liked it, then this is a nice continuation of that. And then The Cursed. This is about a crew of 2 that are shipwrecked on a planet. You have a psychic that learns that this place is like a soul exchange and that you want to die in space rather than get your soul trapped on this planet by these evil gods. And he's like running towards the ship, but it's too late and they're already trapped. It's a very dark ending. So yeah, that one was solid. And for small scraps, in The Duelist, there were just a few little spots that could use some commas in before like proper noun. On page 103, in a mad dash to gin his freedom gain. 105, they skirted the city, crashing through a tower clock and a windmill clock tower. Page 121, when the first batch is cool, she funnels the carbon into the jar and take in back to her room, it back. And then page 197, the door to the pod was only S a few places away, A instead of S. But yeah, overall, some good stuff from Aegeons. I guess I like the Duelists a lot. Mara, Dizzy, Ferrand P.I., Max Ryan, Polybus. I think I would have liked Survivor of Fernworld or the Sirens a bit more if they were not like put together in the same issue, just because they are like pretty similar, you know. Well, one, you're crashed on a planet, the other one, you're just in the middle of the ocean, but it's here's the log, these guys are going crazy, we found the log afterwards, you know what I mean? Hey, so this is the rant before I get into the next one. Sorry if this is kind of cringe or gay, but I'm going to be talking about erotica, porn, of degeneracy. These are just kind of my thoughts and feelings. Then we're going to get into the thing. We're in this weird place where porn is like heavily promoted and everything, and fans and all this crap, like all great for you. It feels like everything kind of has porn in it, or everything is just kind of like hypersexualized when it comes to fiction. And at least for me, there's this desire to put distance between like porn addicts and guys who donate to e-girls for parasocial shit and all that. And then there's this like puritanism that rejects like anything that can be viewed as like erotic and whatever. I don't think I'm kind of in that Puritan camp, but I think I lean more a bit there. I'm not really religious. I think art can be like nude. I think it can even be like erotic, non-pornographic in the same way. I think the motivation behind the piece matters, and also effort matters, right? Like a nude marble statue, I guess it could be arousing to some people, or like a oil painting with nudity in it, but I don't think it was like made, but I think it was made to convey beauty. It also takes years to make art, but like a woman taking 1,000 photos of her ass doesn't take any effort. And the reason for her taking those photos is just get male arousal. You know what I mean? It's not like really conveying beauty. It's still like a nude woman and a nude woman, but it's very different. You just press a button to take a photo and it's just very crass. I think maybe effort and time elevates. Also, there's this inflation of like porn in today's world, which lowers it. Like back in the day, right? This is like decades ago, but something like Baywatch, which is just like women in bikinis running around slowly on a beach. I guess there are men too. But they're not even like in like bikinis like today. They're dressed like pretty conservatively, right? But it like, unless it was just a big meme, but like I think people back then like really liked Baywatch for like the sex appeal, and in today's standards it would be like extremely conservative, right? I think if you tried to like make Baywatch today in the same outfits, it wouldn't work anymore, because things have just slipped so far, because pornography and erotica is such a slippery slope, and it just leads to like worse things, and you always have to go to the next level and the next level and the next level. So which is why I kind of shy away from it, don't really like it, and I'm like hesitant about like works and such that have erotic. It's always like a fine line, I think, but like when something does cross that line, you know when it has crossed that line. Also, there's a connection between it and like autogynephilia and trannies. I think there's this thing with people in like AI porn or whatever, and like fictionalized porn that is like quote unquote like less condemned, because it doesn't have the real world attachment of these porn stars, right? Or e-girl. It doesn't have like a real person who has made like some really bad choices, and that's why they do what they do. and maybe they're just not smart, money hungry, but like the AI thing or fictionalized thing doesn't have that like that ugliness to it, and it breaks like this fantasy slash like personal horror thing. You get like the nakedness and like the nudity of women without like the baggage of real life fans, cam girls type of. But that doesn't mean it would be like based or good to have guys just live to worship like AI porn. I think it makes us like less. And I'm kind of rambling a bit here, but I don't really like it. I think you can do it well, and I'm going to have a few examples, like Midnight Cowboy. Maybe I would dislike this movie now. It definitely has degeneracy in it, but it's always portrayed negatively. I guess it's pretty like conservative in what it shows nowadays, but it's definitely like a darker film. I can also remember this story that I read in high school, so well over a decade ago. I read this story, and it was called The A&P by John Updike. It's about this teenage boy who works at a cashier, and these three girls walk in the store. They're in bikinis, and they're just shopping, and he's kind of ogling them, and they don't have any pockets or anything because they're in swimsuits. So one of them reaches into her cleavage, she pulls out some money, and she hands it to him to pay, and he describes her breasts as 2 scoops of vanilla ice, and that stayed with me for like over a decade, right? It's definitely erotic, but I wouldn't call that pornographic, and it made an impression on me, right? And it's definitely like powerful. It's like powerful, and it can be like good, or it can definitely be used as a weapon. And I think more often than not, it's used as a weapon. Screw with people. I think that's why porn is free, right? Because it's not good. I'm kind of rambling here. I guess I'm just really trying to say in kind of my mushmouth retard way is that you can have like nudity, you can have erotica, you can talk about sex. I don't think you have to go full Puritan mode. But I think we absolutely need a shift of the Overton window, like a very hard shift to the right to have this kind of normalcy. So I think kind of having this overreaction and overcorrection that like more of the religious people is good, it would be better for us, because then we could have a more like get rid of a lot of these seedier elements, and we really need people like in the culture to just be able to stomp this shit down whenever it pops up. But, and the Puritan thing of no sex or no like erotica, we're not like sexless beings. Well, I'm speaking for other people when I say that. So it's repressing these human urges to never like discuss it or to bring it up, but it is a slippery slope. I'm not in a pulpit talking down to you all. I'm not claiming to be this innocent little flower, but this is how I view things, and hopefully that made sense. Anyways, I have sacrificed for you. I have braved it, and somehow I managed to play. So while the game says that it's set in this Neo-Rome, it's really more like HBO's Rome, which I strongly do not recommend. I had some earlier videos on it where I kind of held back on some of my opinions. I no longer really want to hold back on how I really feel, because HBO's Rome has like incest, sexuality, and BDSM, and it just seeks to lower your opinion of the founding of the Roman Empire. It makes Octavian to be this weird sex guy. It's just very ugly, and that's what it sought to do, is just to like make everything very ugly. It takes this part of like our history and it breaks it down. Now, to be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand HBO's Rome. Like the scene of the Jewish nationalist guy fucking the mother of Octavian Caesar, who will become Augustus Caesar and the founder of the Roman Empire. It's very subtle. What did the producers mean by that? So, Orphan, like I said, you start as an apprentice to a cobbler. You are sent to go purchase some stuff, and then you get to make some choices, right? And if you go down one way or you go down the other way, you have a series of choices, and these lead to different scenes. So, if you go down one path, you end up getting pickpocketed, and you chase down this pickpocket who turns out to be a little goblin thief. Not only are they a goblin thief, they are... I don't really want to get into it, but for some of it, and then you've cornered her, and then, well...
Will they just find Millhouse, or will they find him and kill him?
Well, when they find him, they'll crush him.
Excuse me, you didn't answer me. You just trailed off.
Yeah. Yeah, I did kind of trail off there, didn't
So you can kind of like rape her. There's that. And then in other paths, you can be kidnapped by slavers, and then you're brought to a market, and then it ends there. You're probably going to be sold into, I don't know, some kind of sexual slavery. Like, I don't even know with this game. I don't fuck with this guy. If you would be like sold, and then you would be made to like service women, or you'd be sold, be servicing men. I don't know with this thing. And that path just ends there. So you could end up as a slave, or you end up getting the money back, and then you head back to the cobbler's house. Or if you chose earlier to go down the other path in the alley, you can end up in a magician's home, and and then he will offer to like let you be his apprentice, and then I guess you would like learn magic and then take over Rome or whatever. But there's like a dream sequence where there's a portal to another world called Dosmera. There's a purple demon lady that you have a experience with, pretty detailed. And in this world, there's like mutant people, there's elves and dwarves. I think that if it was just like you running around and having sex with like elf women and such, I'd be like, yeah, okay. But I just think that there's probably going to be worse to come and stuff that I would exactly approve of or think's kind of right. So hopefully my little rant like made sense. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like Conan the Barbarian, like the original movie, it has like nudity. It has Valeria, and Valeria is this very attractive woman, but it's not like porn. It didn't like feel like right. Like it fit the setting well, so I think you can do it. This definitely went way over the line, and I think it would probably continue to go way over the line. I think part 2 is coming out later in like May or something. I'm not going to be playing it. I'm done with it. I gave it a shot. I think I probably should have done a little more research before looking at it, but he seemed like, I don't know. Maybe it's an overreaction on my part, but I don't think I really want to like promote or go along with something that's like, this is clearly more graphic than it is anything else. And I think that's where the series is leaning. So that's my take on Orphan. I probably talked more about like porn and degeneracy than I talked about Orphan. So sorry about that as well, but there's not too much to say, right? It was like 28,000 words. Next, I'm talking about 2 books, Battle Games and Hapless Homesteader. These are both by Alex T. Ratcliffe. This is a book reviewer that I found, and we've actually reviewed quite a few of the same books. He's an indie book reviewer, and you might find him interesting, so I have him linked down below. He's not this side of things, but you might find some of his videos interesting, because I'm like, damn, like we have some of the same opinions, and I'm like, this is cool. And so after watching a lot of his videos, I wanted to check out the books he's done. And this book, Battle Games, it didn't look like something I would be into just from looking at the cover. It's like kind of an anime sports thing, and I'm like, that's not me. But I went in because we have a lot of the same takes on books. So I'm like, cool. Battle Games is not a recommendation. I think even if you are more into like sports anime / Japanese stuff, the book has some rather serious issues. The first and major issue is the lack of a plot. I'll read the back cover now. At the end of the 21st century, a new sport is dominating international popularity, the battle games, with every game containing up to 3 random events where melee combat is not only encouraged, it's the only way to win. Meet Anuna, the A-ranked team who are our favorites to win this year's. Disaster strikes as the team's captain and star player Giant Slayer is injured and taken out for the rest of the season. Leadership now falls to the rigid vice captain Harpy, whose militant and often violent administrations causes friction among her teammates. Add to this already combustible mix a new player, Silver, whose arrogant, braggadocious behavior threatens to break the team apart. Inter-team politics are not their only problem. Powerful rival teams, family ties, and a past that just won't die threatens everything they've worked for. Can they overcome and win the A-Rank championship, or will they tear each other apart before another team gets the chance? Find out in the first installment of Battle. So it doesn't quite line up to what's on the back cover with what's in the book. I would say this is more of a situation than a plot. this is like a backdrop, but there isn't a strong like plot that moves the book forward. It's like, here's some things that are happening, but there's this lack of urgency for any of them to happen, and there's like no drive. We need a goal and a motivation to pursue that goal, right? That's a plot. A situation is just like, here's some things, they happened. Our characters aren't really like interested. It talked about working towards his championship. The championship is like almost never mentioned until like right before they're going there. It seems like no one really gives a shit. And characters just don't really have too many motivations or anything to like really carry the plot forward. So it's just like, here's some stuff that happens, and it's going to happen for like 300 pages. We have a lot of unresolved characters in this book. We have a lot of mysteries and dark pasts, but we don't dive into any of it. And it leaves our characters with like this, not a lot of space to grow, since we're left waiting for future installment to develop or understand. Right. There's a lot going on with like, this character has a dark past, right? But I can't tell you about it. And I'm like, okay, I might be a little more invested in this character if I knew more than just kind of like a generic like anime thing. You know what I mean? Like kind of anime background. I felt like there's a great lack of stakes here. Like they didn't feel like super important or urgent. Like Gus is Silver, and he joins the team, and he's the new guy, and eventually he fits in with the team, but it doesn't feel like super urgent, right? Like, okay, well, Giant Slayer is eventually going to be healed and he's going to come back on the team. Is Gus worried that he might be kicked off or forced to find a new team? No, that thought never enters his mind. The team doesn't really seem to give a shit about the championship. Some of it is fun, but it's not like really deep, right? Oh, and I never quite put some of the names of characters together, because for this, they have a when they play the game, they have a game name, and then they also have their real names. So another complaint I have is on page 1 and 2. So very early, we were kind of on a bad footing. It introduces a lot of characters and too fast. So I'm just going to read proper names that are dropped on pages 1 and 2. We have Jumper, Golden Eagle, Giant Slayer, Everest, Frankie, Xander, Sledge, Ashley, aka Harpy. That's on page 1 and 2, and those are just names. That's a lot. That's a lot of fucking names. I never quite put any of them together. I will say, while Dierock88 had a large cast of characters, I could like picture them. I could picture them a lot better than I can picture these guys. So basically, in the battle games, they wear armor and they fight in a series of games to knock out an opponent's team. You have like things where like tiles fall down after you step on them, King of the Hill, things like that. Frankie, aka Giant Slayer, he gets his leg destroyed by one of the guys on the other team's having this illegal weapon, so he's going to be in the hospital for a long time. There's Selena, Golden Eagle, and Xander, who is the tech who like repairs their armor and stuff. They're dating. There's a bunch of time spent on them training and their matches, and some of it is all right, but I think it goes on quite a bit. Gus doesn't get along with the team at first, and there's some friction there, which is fine. I think that's done pretty well. Like, not all the humor is like bad, but there's not enough to like carry us forward, right? Because no one really wants anything that badly. Like, Frankie obviously wants to get out of the hospital and rejoin his team and get back to playing, but that's really it, and that's not strong enough. That's really not strong enough to keep it going. We also get introduced to Team Thunder, and they have a woman named Amazon as their leader. That's the other woman on the cover. The one in the silver is Harpy, and then there's Amazon. And while this seems like they have this really like hard rivalry, they really don't. It kind of is at the very end a little bit, but I don't know. It makes me think like these two, they've been enemies for a long time. They're really not. They just seem like friendly enough to each other, and then they fight at the end. And so they're training, they're fighting around the world against other teams. They have this fight against the Nordic team, which is okay. One of the women on that team is a little crazy, and she's really into Gus. And Frankie, aka Giant Slayer, he's stuck doing nothing in the hospital, and this is endemic of this book. It's a promise of cool stuff like Frankie coming back that's going to happen in a later book, right? So it's like, hey, Harpy and Xander, they have this weird, like, dark past. We're not going to get into that now, but it's going to happen in a later book. Hey, Rufus is doing some, like, weird stuff where he's meeting with people in a diner and they have a lot of cryptic conversations. Don't worry, it'll happen in a later book. All the interesting stuff has been pushed off and pushed off and pushed off, leaving us with not much for book 1. There's some alright hospital humor with Frankie trying like various escape attempts, because we're in the future, right? So they have like better technology and shit. Frankie like trying to break out of the hospital to rejoin his team. It's fine. Gus gets some crazy fan mail from that one chick from the Nordic team. Oh, and then when they go to Japan, like Golden Eagle and Ashley, they bond a bit. Harpy and Xander are like brother and sister. And Selena wants more information on Xander because they've been dating for like a year, but he still doesn't tell her much. And Ashley can't tell her how Xander knows all this information, or how Xander and her entered the league at a higher rank, or how he became the team's tech. It's just like, wow, there are all these mysteries about Xander, but we're not going to touch on them here. It's just a promise of later stuff. I kept writing in the book every once in a while, like maybe every 40, 50 pages, what is the plot? And I'm like, does Slice of Life technically need one? And I think it kind of does, to keep me interested for 300 pages. I think it does. There's like why is this story being told now? What's so interesting? What's so urgent that this has to happen right now? Yeah, and so like Gus follows Rufus around, and Rufus is like their big heavy guy on the team, and he meets with like a mysterious guy in a diner several times in the book, but we get nothing out of it because it's just like cryptic talk, cryptic talk, cryptic talk, cryptic talk, and I'm like, all right, that doesn't mean anything. It's another mystery that just goes nowhere. And apparently there's like a deal or something going on, but Selena's getting angrier and angrier throughout the book because Xander just won't get close to her and won't tell her anything about his past. So she ends up kissing Gus, and they're about to have sex when Ashley interrupts them. And it's like, there's this like not really a love triangle. She just wanted to cheat on, but it's like just drama between people I don't really give a shit about. But Ashley's about to fuck both of them up when Xander gets in there, and Xander says something, don't let the sacrifice be in vain. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, maybe this would be cool, like, if you answered some mysteries, but the fact that you've answered none of them means I don't really give a shit about, here's another mysterious line. You know what I mean? Oh, we have some, like, stuff between Henry and Andrew, who are 2 members of the team. Like, they're friends. They, like, visit, I think, Andrew's family, and then later on they go on a trip to, like, a war memorial. But I'll tell you, I really can't tell them apart too well. I can't picture them that well, and that was kind of an issue. We learned about the War of Billions from them, which led to a bunch of veterans being around, and these veterans ended up making this game as something to do, and I guess to deal with stress. We get told about some player called Technopath, who was an S-ranked player who disappeared, but he was like the best in the game. And he's like the best in the game, but he's just, no one knows what happened. We have a conversation between Missy, who is Xander's sister, and then Ashley. They talk about how they had to lie to Xander's parents because Ashley was kind of raised by Xander's parents. And they told them that they joined the high school's battle games team when really they were doing something else, but they couldn't tell Xander's parents the truth, and their lives aren't in danger anymore. I know you have your buddy thing, but that's been going on for 7 years, so I don't know. I guess they're high school students doing like Black Ops stuff. I don't know, like anime stuff that I don't really care for. I just don't really like kids too much in media. Or like, you know what I mean? Like, they were a high school student, but they were the biggest badass ever. And I'm like, eh. And while I can't picture like Henry or Andrew too well, I can picture like Frankie, Gus, Ashley, Amazon, Heartbeat, like I can picture them fairly well. So I don't know, everyone else, they don't have enough time, or they're not doing like enough. And Rufus is just like a name that is doing like cryptic shit. You know what I mean? So I made a note for page 217. Oh, Amazon is talking with Xander. They met up. They're like in a restaurant and they just ran into each other. That happens a few times. But Amazon calls Xander Talon. How do you know that name? And then Amazon calls herself Cersei. He says, you can't be her. Amazon says, I made my deal with Bellamy. I'm not going back. Tess laughed. I believed you. I don't think I could make you anyway. She moved to a nearby seat and sat, almost touching him. Plus, you haven't made a deal with this Bellamy yet. Xander looked horrified. You can't be. I am, she said distantly, but I am. That's why I'm in the league now. So I don't know what a Bellamy is. It's just more cryptic stuff, just added to the pile. I don't care. But Xander leaves after his girlfriend almost cheats on him, and then he's like doing tech for Amazon and her team. And Ashley's really fucked up about it because they were super close, but Xander just left without really saying goodbye. And then on page 266, they're fighting a game. Ashley's being super quiet. She's not talking or anything, and they're getting their ass beat in this game. But during the final round, where Ashley is just like getting hit and taking all this abuse and she's not moving, she has like her little anime moment, and then she just screams really loud, and then she defeats all three opponents by herself. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really care for the anime. Then on page 283, we're at the championship, which no one seemed to really care about, but here we are. And Technopath is on Team Thunder, and I'm like, isn't this illegal? Isn't this illegal that during the last round of a championship game, you have a guy just show up and, you know, he wasn't on the roster before. Like, I don't watch sports, but it's like, hey, we're in the NBA championships. Oh, we have a new guy just before the final game. Don't worry about it. Also, he's like the best in the league. Like, isn't this illegal? But then it dawned on me on page 289 when Technopath is just like beating the shit out of everyone that he is not elated because Xander officially joined Team Thunder a while ago, and this is Xander because Xander like looks at Selena, his ex-girlfriend, and he also looks at Gus in a certain way, and you're like, okay, this is Xander. And then there's a final round, and it's between Amazon and Ashley, and Amazon calls Ashley Virgo, which I don't know. It's another like cryptic name that we just don't fucking know about. And then Amazon beats the shit out of Ashley. And there you go. That's the book. At the end, it's like, okay, the team's going to get back together. They're going to try again for next year. We have more cryptic stuff on page 303 where because Ashley's helmet was knocked off, because they all like wear helmets when they play the game so no one knows their identities. Ashley's helmet got knocked off. And then this one woman in a penthouse is like obsessing over it. And then she realizes that she knows Ashley and that they're like high school friends. And she has like a photo of like Ashley, Xander, her, and another person. So I guess there's more stuff for the next book. Overall, I don't really like it. It's not just like for the anime stuff, which is whatever. But it's lacking urgency. It's lacking motivation to keep reading. It builds up too many mysteries that maybe get resolved in book 2. It resolves nothing in this book. Not really. I mean, Xander is Technopath. It's like, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I still really like the guys' indie book reviews, so check those out. I think you would find those entertaining. But Hapless Homesteader, this is another book by Alex T. Ratcliffe. This is a what-if scenario. I didn't love it. It's about the vaccine, like the vac. Killed a bunch of people and it spread via contact to the unvaccinated. It's about a man named Bob Stacky, who's a shut-in computer guy who doesn't realize that the world has ended outside until the power stops. He is immune to all the media and what's happening. I didn't find it super believable, but apparently when he goes outside, like the world has been over for basically a few weeks. Like there's been a huge die-off. And he just drives to his local grocery store. And when he gets to the grocery store, he finds it half stocked. So he just takes some of the groceries, not all of them. And then he drives back home and he checks his phone, which still has some power left. And he reads a bunch of headlines about how badly things have gone. And that's like complete chaos. But he saw like no bodies. He saw no signs of looting or anything. And this is a point of contention for me because, one, this grocery store is a main store just out in the open. This is not a survival book, which is fine, but it also doesn't really have a challenge for Bob Stack either. Because while he is like a shut-in computer guy, and you would think like if everything just shut off, he would be fucked, right? He would be like starving in his house, especially with winter on the way. But that doesn't happen because all the grocery stores still have like supplies in them initially. And then he ends up meeting a woman named Ruth, who is an old woman, but she grew up on a farm, and she goes to live with him, and she's helping him survive. But he's just going around, and he's still, like, taking stuff out of stores. Like, he doesn't raid all that he can at first. Also, there's a gun store. It's completely unlooted. And I'm like, okay, you're describing like a global pandemic that has killed millions of people. Some people are not vaccinated. You would think that, everything would kind of be looted, like definitely like food and guns and everything. There'd be a lot of chaos, but there's almost nothing. So you could believe that a lot of people who were vaccinated in this what if scenario have just died off. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. But there's still like a decent amount of people who didn't get the vaccine, who would be like running around and just stealing everything that they can, right? Oh, and then on page 21, he's driving around and there's like, and it's like the highway that goes into like the more rural countryside, and there are a bunch of cars there full of dead bodies, and these people have been shot and killed here. So when I'm saying like it wasn't like an instant death thing where some people were actually like trying to flee and get out of the cities. So you would think that not everyone would be killed in their attempt to escape, and they would turn back around and then they would just loot everything in the city. But I think if you do that, and then Bob is competing against others for like food and resource, then it's a very different book. But it's just not quite believable. If you can get past that, I still think the book has like issues. So I don't know. I still don't think it's great, but it definitely doesn't start on good footing. I did like this on page 26. He ends up finding 2 dogs. He names one of them Abigail. Ruth said it was sweet how I named her after an old girlfriend. I don't want to tell her I named the dog after my romance choice in the Stardew Valley game. So like there is some good humor. There is like good stuff there. And so like the book is just a series of journal entries by Bob. And I never felt that he was in too much danger. He was never really hungry since food was plenty and Ruth showed up very early. I think him being like hungry and desperate and cold could have been good. The book's just kind of like, here's some fun stuff you could do if like the world ended to kind of have a decent life, but it's not much of a story. Like there's a cougar that he like gets in a fight that he fights a few times and then eventually kills, but that's kind of it. So it's like him figuring out a way to like pump water from the river to his house, setting up windmills to make power, gardening, hunting, cougar fight. We have something where Ruth has Alzheimer's and she needs to get medicine for it. But to get medicine, you would have to go to the hospital. And on page 85, this is just when Bob is out like hunting and getting supplies. He goes near the hospital and it's just this horrible stench of death. But then he goes into the hospital and even in the lobby. And I had an issue with this just because I'm like, okay, you don't know like how deadly this disease is. Apparently it killed like a fuck ton of people. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near a hospital or a dead body because I don't know, like if the body's dead, could you still get a disease from it? I would think probably, or you could get like really sick. But he's like standing in this hospital lobby and there are dead bodies all around him. He's not wearing any protection or anything, and this just felt like kind of insane. But after this scene, this is when we learn that he has to go to the hospital for Ruth to get her the medicine, right? But I think by having him go in the hospital lobby first, you cut some of that tension. I think just like a bit of the tension is cut because he's already shown a willingness to like go in the hospital lobby. If you just like remove that, but like he like sees the hospital in the distance and he like smells the death and he's like really scared of it, and he should be. And then next chapter, Ruth needs the medicine. He has to work up the courage to go to the hospital for her. I think that would have been a little better, like just reorder that a little bit. Then we get some signs that there are other people around, like someone living in a library. And then when he gets attacked by the cougar, this person goes to get Ruth and then to help him. He actually has seen like some feral person running around before. This is Claire, and Claire was a veterinary student, and she's just been kind of running around. She'd been like abused by some humans, and then she's just kind of hiding out on her own, but she comes to live with them. She's just she's just slowly getting acclimated to living amongst people again, normal. Ruth gets sick and she dies, and then Bob ends up getting Claire pregnant, and then while she's pregnant, some Mennonites show up. But they seem like decent people, and you know that they're gonna like have some kind of community with these Mennonites. So things seem decent for them going forward. It's like some of it is like fun, some of it is interesting. Not enough like tension or urgency. I understand like not wanting it to be like a generic like post-apocalyptic. He's like having a shootout with raiders in the convenience store for candy bars. But you still need like a consistent world. You know what I mean? So hopefully that made sense. I thought this was okay, not great. I probably would not read more about Battle Game because I'm just not really interested in the world. Probably not more on Hapless Homesteader. but I don't know. Would I read more by him? It would just kind of depend. So the very last thing, and the one that I have the least to say about, is I'm a part of like this little book club thing, and we went over Beowulf. I think it is worth reading. I strongly recommend not reading it in like the old text. It would be like reading a foreign language. You would have to constantly reference like a translation guide. My advice would be to read, there's a translation online by Seamus Haney, and that was pretty good, and it's for modern English readers, right? It's a simple story, like Beowulf, he fights 3 monsters. The monsters have some depth to them. It's kind of a commentary on like what these ancient warriors valued and everything, but it is like a bit repetitive. There are some asides that I don't love because they're not super relevant. And then we also have, and there's just a bunch of boasting where like Beowulf will tell basically everyone his story over and over and over again. And I know boasting was very important to like ancient peoples and all that, but it's not fun to read. So I think it's worth reading at least once because it's short, it's important, but definitely do yourself a favor and go for a more modern translation. Because that's just going to be easier on you to read. So last, I'm going to talk about some updates. I am going to have a video on 2 video games coming out soon. I still haven't finished it. It's Sunday, and I really wanted to get at least all of the gameplay done and recorded this weekend. Hopefully that's going to happen. It is taking me way longer than I wanted. Like I'm like at 100 hours now. And I also plan to have a Rumble or Odyssey channel soon. Makes sense. We could get dropped anytime for anything. We've gotten away with a lot on this channel. I've said some words that maybe I shouldn't have said in some videos, but it was fun to do. So yeah, I definitely need to do that. I'm going to be covering 2 books in a video on that channel, Rumble or Odyssey. I haven't decided. These are books that are more of and these books are more kind of out there. And I don't know if I really want that on the main channel, but I really should cover them, and I've meant to for a while. So that's going to be coming out probably in late May or so, and I'll just make an announcement like on this channel and like Twitter that's going to be on that channel over there. Also, I might do this here or on that other new channel, but I don't like love to hate watch something, but I kind of want to rip apart this old Western movie that's incredibly subversive. It's this John Wayne movie. I don't know, though, because it's kind of against, like, the channel, right? Because the channel is supposed to be White Pill Media, right? And not everything I review is, like, a recommendation, but, like, hopefully enough of it is a recommendation, right? So, I don't know. I might do it here or there, but I feel like it could be kind of interesting because I don't really think I've seen a ton of people, like, talk about it, right? It's one that's a bit under the radar. There's definitely a lot to hate with it. So I don't know. I guess let me know in the comments if you would want to see that here. And then I guess I could also talk about Westerns that I do like and do recommend to people. So yeah, we could do that. And last thing is I have this experiment going on, and I will report on that in a month. That's very cryptic. But yeah, we'll see if it bears fruit. If it bears fruit, I'll talk about it a bit more. If it doesn't, I'll still discuss it as a failure, and if it's really worth your time to try for yourself. So that's the video. That was 9 titles. Beowulf, there wasn't too much to say there. But yeah, a lot of recommendations, some of them not recommendations. Sorry if that rant was stupid, but I feel like it makes sense where it's like, I don't really want to be on the quote unquote right and then like promoting something that is just like pornography. Like if something has like erotica or sex, I think it's fine, like definitely fine, but that it definitely like went over the line. And I feel like, yeah, just future installments of that, it's going to keep going over that line. So I don't know. I stand by that. That's going to be it. So, you know, hopefully, yeah, some channel diversity soon with that video coming out. I have a lot to bitch about with those games, so that'll be okay. Also, did you know I got like fucking big on one of my videos, the second video I fucking uploaded on this channel, which is a video with really bad audio. You really have to crank your volume up to hear anything, but it got like 170,000 views. I'm so pissed off of all the things to just like catch in the algorithm. It's fucking that. Nothing that I've like worked on, nothing that took any fucking effort. It's just a clip from Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. I'm so mad. I'm so pissed off. But there you go. If you want like 170,000 views for no effort and a bad video with really bad audio, just do that, I guess. So, all right. That's going to be it from me. Thanks for watching. White Pill Media out.